you know what a group of flamingos is called? That's just one of thousands of facts you'll discover on 5 daily trivia questions. Hi, I'm Mark Ellison. Join me every weekday for 5 mind-expanding questions about everything from ancient history to modern technology. Perfect for impressing friends or dominating your next pub quiz. 5 daily trivia questions. And the answer, a group of flamingos, is called a flamboyance. 5 daily trivia questions.
Calaroga Shark Media.
Welcome to Acting President, Episode 1, Pilot.
The morning after The Insurgent premiered, James "Jimmy" Bennett woke to the sound of his phone buzzing incessantly on his nightstand. 27 text messages, 42 emails, and a series of increasingly excited voicemails from his publicist, Emma Delgado. He'd been in Hollywood long enough to know what this meant. His new show was a hit. Bennett had spent the last decade focused on politics. 2 terms as California's governor left him with a reputation as a moderate who could work across the aisle, a rare commodity in today's political landscape. Before that, he'd been an action star, not quite A-list, but reliable box office for a solid 15 years. When Pantheon Plus approached him about The Insurgent, he'd been skeptical. The premise seemed provocative. Bennett would play a fictionalized version of himself, a former actor and governor who, disenchanted with the current administration, gets pulled into a conspiracy to overthrow the government. The pitch had come just 6 months after he left office, while he was still considering his next move. It's fiction, Governor, the showrunner had assured him, but with just enough reality to make viewers wonder. That's the sweet spot. Bennett hadn't expected the show to become an overnight sensation. The Nielsen data Emma texted showed it had shattered Pantheon Plus's previous premiere records. Bennett scrolled through the reviews as his coffee brewed in his Malibu kitchen, ocean waves visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. The trades had called his performance surprisingly nuanced. The Times said the show raised uncomfortable questions about the fragility of American democracy. The entertainment websites compared it to House of Cards and Homeland, with a dash of wish-fulfillment fantasy for those disillusioned with the current political climate. When Emma called, she didn't just sound excited. There was concern underlying her congratulations. People were talking about the show like it was Bennett's political statement. The line between him and the character was getting blurry already. Bennett laughed it off. That was the point, wasn't it? That's why they cast him. Emma cautioned him to be careful in interviews. Make it clear you're playing a role, she insisted. President Stillman's people are already calling, wanting to know if this is your way of testing political waters again. Bennett assured her he had no intention of going back into politics, at least not anytime soon. After 2 terms as governor, he was enjoying the relative freedom of being a private citizen again. The show was just a role, good acting, nothing more. Over the next few days, Bennett's schedule filled with press junkets, late-night appearances, and radio interviews. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. How much of the fictional Jimmy Bennett reflected the real one? The character is frustrated with the direction of the country, Bennett carefully explained on the morning show. I think many Americans share that frustration, regardless of political affiliation. But orchestrating a coup, that's pure fiction. Would you ever consider running for president? The host pressed. Bennett offered his practiced smile. I've learned to never say never, but right now, I'm focused on my return to entertainment. If people want political commentary from me, they'll have to look for the subtext in my performance. By the end of the week, the viewership for Episode 1 had doubled with on-demand streaming. Social media couldn't stop dissecting every scene, looking for parallels between Bennett's character and his actual political positions. Pantheon Plus's marketing team capitalized on the buzz, releasing cryptic teasers for upcoming episodes that further blurred the line between fiction and reality. The Sunday night following the premiere, Bennett found himself watching the social media response in real time as episode 2 dropped. Hashtags about the show dominated trending topics. GIFs and clips from pivotal scenes circulated at a frantic pace. One scene in particular, where Bennett's character addresses a room full of disaffected politicians and military officials, was being shared with captions like, "Where's the lie, though?" in Bennett 2028. Emma had advised him to stay off social media, but Bennett couldn't resist. The blurring of fiction and reality had become fascinating, like watching an experiment unfold where he was both scientist and subject. The show was tapping into something real, a current of dissatisfaction, a hunger for disruption of the status quo. His phone rang, a number he didn't recognize, but with a DC area code. "Governor Bennett?" The voice was familiar, though Bennett couldn't immediately place it. "It's been a while." Then it clicked. Victor Harding, his former chief of staff during his first term as governor, the man who'd helped architect his political rise before differences in their vision led to an amicable parting of ways. Harding had gone on to work for several high-profile administration officials in Washington. "Victor?" Bennett said, genuinely surprised. "It has been a while." "Quite the show you've got there." Harding's tone was difficult to read. "I'm in California for a few days. Thought I might stop by, catch up, if you're not too busy being a television star."
You can get this podcast completely ad-free right now. If you're on Apple, just click the banner that says Uninterrupted Listening, and you'll get your first month free. If you use Spotify or other podcast players, go to calaroga.com/plus. It's just $5 a month, and you'll get access to over 20 premium shows with no interruptions. Binge listen to new series like the political thriller Acting President, Signal Lost, where military secrets land on the wrong phone, and Pager Protocol, the thriller about exploding pagers in the wrong hands. Plus, enjoy daily shows like Palace Intrigue about the royal family, daily comedy news, and 5 daily trivia questions to test your knowledge, and White Smoke, taking you behind the scenes at what's happening right now at the Vatican. You also get all our hot shows like 5 Good News Stories. Enjoy your favorite content without any ad breaks. Remember, Apple users click the Uninterrupted Listening banner for your free first month, and everyone else head to calaroga.com/plus. Get ad-free listening today.
Welcome to Insurgent Theory. I'm your host, Garrett Fisher, breaking down every twist, turn, and political machination in Pantheon Plus's explosive new drama, The Insurgent. Today we're dissecting that premiere that has everyone talking. First off, can we acknowledge the absolute genius of casting James Bennett to play himself? The man governed California for 8 years with approval ratings that never dipped below 60%. He's practically American royalty, and now he's starring in a show about overthrowing the government? That's either the most brilliant meta-commentary on our political system, or it's wildly irresponsible, maybe both. For those who haven't watched, though ratings suggest that's approximately 12 people in America, The Insurgent follows a fictionalized version of Bennett who, after leaving the governor's office, becomes increasingly disillusioned with President Stillman's administration. The parallels to reality are impossible to ignore. Bennett did criticize Stillman's tariff policies during his final press conference as governor. But here's where things get interesting, folks. Bennett's character gets approached by a shadowy cabal of political operatives, military officials, and tech billionaires who believe American democracy is failing. They think Bennett is the only person with enough popularity to lead what they call a course correction. Not a coup, mind you, a course correction. Gotta love that euphemism. The question the show asks is, what would happen if a genuinely popular public figure decided the system was broken beyond repair? What if they had resources, connections, and public goodwill? Could they actually pull off restructuring the government outside constitutional means? Now, I've got my theories about where this is headed, but let's talk about that scene in Bennett's Malibu home, where he's watching President Stillman announce another round of tariffs. The camera holds on Bennett's face for a full 30 seconds. No dialogue. Just that slow burn of frustration. That's not acting, people. That's the real James Bennett showing through. But here's what's bugging me. And listen, I love this show, I'm all in, but some of these coincidences are just too convenient. The way Bennett's character just happens to run into a disgruntled general at his gym. The way his former chief of staff just happens to have connections to intelligence agencies. The writers are asking us to suspend a lot of disbelief here. Still, I can't wait for episode 2. Previews suggest we'll see Bennett starting to assemble his team. Will he cross the point of no return? And how far is this show willing to go? If you're loving these theories, follow Insurgent Theory exclusively on Calaroga Shark Media, wherever you get your shows. Until next week, I'm Garrett Fisher, reminding you that the line between fiction and reality isn't always as clear as we'd like to think.
Two days later, Bennett agreed to meet Victor Harding at his home. For old time's sake, he told himself, though curiosity was the greater motivator. What did his former chief of staff want after all this time? Harding arrived in a sleek black Audi, dressed in the same impeccable suits Bennett remembered. He'd aged well in the years since they'd worked together, a touch of silver at the temples, perhaps a few more lines around the eyes, but still carrying himself with that quiet assurance that had made him such an effective political operative. They settled in Bennett's backyard patio overlooking the Pacific. The conversation began with pleasantries, mutual connections, shared memories from the governor's office, Harding's recent consulting work for various Washington power players. "I have to say," Harding finally said, swirling the scotch Bennett had poured, "your show has made quite the impression in certain circles. People are talking." "Good ratings are hard to ignore," Bennett replied with practiced modesty. "It's not just the ratings," Harding leaned forward. "It's the premise. It's got people thinking." Bennett chuckled. "It's just entertainment, Victor." "Is it?" Harding's expression remained neutral, but his eyes were intent. "Because your fictional self makes some compelling points about the state of things. Those tariffs are crippling certain industries. The executive orders are bypassing congressional oversight. The courts are being packed. I remember you expressing similar concerns when you were in office." "Everyone has concerns," Bennett said carefully. "That doesn't mean I'd advocate for what the character is suggesting." "Of course not," Harding smiled thinly. "But hypothetically, do you think something like that could work? In the show, I mean." Bennett studied his former advisor. "The writers seem to think so. Critics are divided. Some call it a fascinating thought experiment, others dangerous fantasy. And what do you think?" "I think it makes for good drama," Bennett answered diplomatically. Harding set down his glass. "President Stillman's approval rating hit 34% this morning, lowest of his presidency. Congress is deadlocked. The Supreme Court is making increasingly partisan decisions. Foreign powers are testing our resolve on multiple fronts." He paused. "What if it's not just drama, Jimmy? What if it's prophecy?" Bennett laughed, but the sound fell flat. "Now you sound like one of those conspiracy theorists online." "I just find it interesting," Harding continued undeterred, "that you chose this role, this specific role, at this specific time." "I didn't write it, Victor. I'm just playing the part." Convincingly, Harding stood, walking to the edge of the patio to look out at the ocean. "You know, when we worked together, I always thought you were playing the long game. That governorship was just a stepping stone. Then you stepped aside after 2 terms when you could have run for Senate or positioned yourself for a presidential campaign." "I did my service," Bennett said. 8 years was enough." Harding turned back to face him. What if it wasn't? What if there was another way to serve? A more direct approach? The conversation had taken a turn that left Bennett uneasy. Was his former chief of staff suggesting what it seemed he was suggesting? "President Stillman has 3 more years in office," Bennett pointed out. "Potentially 7 if he wins re-election. That's the system. We wait our turn." Harding's smile was enigmatic. "What if it didn't have to be? What if what's happening on your show could happen in real life, with you at the helm?" Bennett stared at his former advisor. a chill running through him despite the warm California evening. The line between fiction and reality, already blurred by his role, suddenly seemed to be dissolving altogether. And the most disturbing part? For just a moment before his better judgment kicked in, Bennett found himself considering the possibility.
Acting President has been a production of Calaroga Shark Media. Executive producers John McDermott and Mark Francis. Elements of AI have been used in the production of this episode.
As the world mourns Pope Francis, history's most secretive transfer of power begins. White smoke, the path to a new pope, guides you through this momentous transition. We explain exactly what happens next, leading to the dramatic conclave vote. Learn how each ritual unfolds, what each tradition means, and why these ancient ceremonies still matter today. Follow along as the throne of St. Peter stands empty and a new chapter in church history begins. White Smoke, available wherever you get your podcasts.